Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Welcome to the segment of Coach Gurbani's a-sabad-a-day. The recitation is Gauri Gwareri Mahalla Tija. So Thao Sach man Nirmal Hoi, Sache Nivas Kare Sach Soe, Sachi Bani Jug Chare Jape, Sab Kich Sacha Ape Ape. ਕਰਮ ਹੋਵੇ ਸਤ ਸੰਗ ਮਿਲਾਏ ਹਰਿ ਗੁਣ ਗਾਵੇ ਬੈਸ ਸੋ ਥਾਏ ਰਹਾਓ ਜਲੋ ਇਹ ਜੇ ਵਹ ਦੂਜੇ ਪਾਏ ਹਰ ਰਸ ਨ ਚਾਖੇ ਫੀਕਾ ਆਲਾਏ ਬਿਨ ਬੂਝੇ ਤਨ ਮਨ ਫੀਕਾ ਹੋਏ ਬਿਨ ਨਾਵੇਂ ਦੁਖੀਆ ਚੱਲੇ ਰੋਏ ਰਸਨਾ ਹਰ ਰਸ ਚਾਖਿਆ ਸਹਿਜ ਸੁਭਾਏ ਗੁਰ ਕਿਰਪਾ ਤੇ ਸੱਚ ਸਮਾਏ ਸਾਚੇ ਰਾਤੀ ਗੁਰ ਸ਼ਬਦ ਵਿਚਾਰ ਅੰਮ੍ਰਿਤ ਪੀਵੈ ਨਿਰਮਲ ਧਾਰ ਨਾਮੇ ਸਮਾਵੈ ਜੋ ਭਾਂਡਾ ਹੋਏ ਊਂਦੇ ਭਾਂਡੇ ਟਿਕੇ ਨ ਕੋਏ ਗੁਰ ਸ਼ਬਦੀ ਮਨ ਨਾਮ ਨਿਵਾਸ ਨਾਨਕ ਸੱਚ ਭਾਂਡਾ ਜਿਸ ਸ਼ਬਦ ਪਿਆਸ ਕਰਮ ਹੋਵੇ ਸਤ ਸੰਗ ਮਿਲਾਏ ਹਰ ਗੁਣ ਗਾਵੇ ਬੈਸ ਸੋ ਥਾਏ If one is so graced, then association with the seekers is found. In that company, the virtues of the self are assimilated. This is the rahau. It is pointing to So Thao, which is what the first verse begins with. That place, that association. So Thao Sach man Nirmal Hoi. That place where the mind is made pure. That place is excellent. Sach, where the truth is reflected upon. Such a nivas kare such a soe. In that place, in that association, the eternal abides. When we are together in Sangat, the right association, reflecting collectively on the self appears mystically in that association. And there, the Guru says, the true speech resounds in the four ages. In other words, the transcendent speech of the Guru is what is being reflected on. Sab kich sacha ape ape. The realization that the transcendent is self-existent and all-pervading. So what is being spoken of is the association, Sat Sangat. That association where the mind listens to and absorbs the true speech of the Guru. Sachi Bani Jugachare. By reflecting and contemplating on the self in Sangat, the mind learns to rid itself of the delusion, the impurity of haume, and becomes devoid of the impression of haume. What that means is that the mind realizes the presence of the eternal, the self-existent within oneself. So it is the assembly, good company, good society that is being pointed to here, although a satsangat from an inner perspective is also a threshold of the consciousness where the ego consciousness dissolves into transcendental consciousness, into universal consciousness. That is the experience, and it has to be had to know what it is. It cannot be explained intellectually. We can simply put words around it. And so here is the problem with the mind as it is today. The Guru says, Jalo eh jeva duje pae. Burn the tongue that loves duality. Harrasna chakhe fikka alai. It has no taste of self-knowledge and engages in insipid talk. Bin bujhe tanman fikka hoye. Without intuitive awareness, bujna, the mind and the body become jaded. And bin name dukhiya challe roe. That is our state. Without self-knowledge, we depart from existence, wailing in sorrow. What the Guru really is saying is not to cultivate self-knowledge is the greatest omission that you could possibly make in life. It is losing the greatest opportunity that you have had. And therefore, the repentance and the regret is equally great. Now, it says, Jalo e Jehva. We should pay attention to Jehva. The tongue is being used here as a metaphor for the mind or the intellect. Because after all, the tongue and the mind are a continuum. The tongue simply articulates what's in the mind or what is on the mind. So tongue here should not be taken literally. And burning the tongue simply means to discard the mind's current thinking, which is haume drawn. And here the reference is to duje pai. So we have to understand what duje pai is. Duje pai is duality, non-dual awareness. That is to say, haume has an associated pattern of thinking. Dual thinking is when you see the world in terms of mutually exclusive opposites. The good, the bad, negative, positive. That's how we see the world. But that's haume. It creates a subject and an object, an observer and the observed. That is because it does not know the self. It does not recognize the self as pervading everywhere, behind this apparent duality. And that causes it to get misled. And the Guru says, Rasna hararas chakya sehaj subaye, gur kirpate sach sabaye. The mind, the tongue, the mind that tastes the essence of the self finds sehaj, a state of harmony. And through the benevolent Gur wisdom, the mind finds its eternal home. Gur kirpate sach samay. Samay is inherence, to stick to. It becomes like the truth. In other words, it finds itself. And it is the instruction of the Guru, the word, that imbues the mind with that knowledge. Sache rati Guru sabad vichar. And then what happens to the mind? Amrit pive nirmal tar. Then the mind drinks from the pure stream of the immortal. What that means is, then the mind is able to see the world for what it truly is. It is no longer clouded in its judgment. So when self-knowledge dawns, the ego is dissolved. If you're interested in a fuller treatment of Sahaj, we would recommend that you visit our glossary section at www.khojgurbani.org. And in conclusion, Naam mein samave jo panda hoye, unde pande tike na koe. So here, to understand panda becomes important. It says self-knowledge requires a receptacle. Naam samave jo panda hoye. It's referring to the mind. A receptive mind is needed. And then he says, unde pande tike na koe. Unda, inverted. An inverted pot cannot hold anything. So the mind is inverted. What that means is It is functioning out of an ego consciousness. So therefore, it cannot hold self-knowledge. We have to first make the mind receptive, panda, receptive, so that it can hold self-knowledge. And that happens only when Gur Sabdi, Nanak Sach Panda, Jis Sabad Pyas. There has to be motivation, thirst for self-knowledge. So Panda is treated as a receptacle, but it also means noise, it also means quarrelsome, it also means disharmonious. These are all indicators of the mind as it is in its haume state. It has to change. So the passage is implying that the mind is innately disharmonious, noisy, and not receptive to self-knowledge. For self-knowledge to stand, the mind has to be made harmonious, sahaj. It has to come into that state. And for that to happen, we must have desire. Just a note on dualistic thinking that is referred to here as duja pai. This is also referred to in Gurbani as Dwat, which in Indian thought stands for various schools, systems of philosophy that distinguish themselves from the Advaita school. The Advaita meaning not two, or one without a second. So Gurmat doctrine stands for Ik Oankar, the principle of unity within diversity, the one as many and the many as one. Ek hai, anek hai, or Nirgun Aap, Sargun Bhi Ohi. The manifest and the unmanifest are one. So the opposites that we see through our haume consciousness are really two ends of the same thread. So the unity includes the opposites. On that note, until the next time, Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.